When we talk of organized crime in India, it is the Mumbai underworld, the gangland killings of the 80s and 90s, where businessmen, Bollywood, and politicians lived in fear, and Dawood and Chota Rajan starred as its dramatis personae that immediately come to mind. Not as widely documented is the organized crime or the gangs in Punjab that appear to operate with much the same impunity. We're going to try and address that today. This is your weekly fix. I'm Smitha Nair. On Sunday evening, a phenomenally popular Punjabi rapper, Shubdeep Singh Sidhu, 28 years of age, known by his stage name Sidhu Moosewala, was shot dead. A Canada based gangster, Goldie Brar, has reportedly claimed responsibility for the killing. He's an associate of jail gangster Lawrence Bishnoi. Bishnoi, it has emerged, planned Moosewala's murder from inside Tihar jail. It is speculated to be revenge for the killing of Vicky Medukera, an Akali Dal youth wing leader for which they held Moosewala responsible. Now, Moosewala, who had millions of followers on social media, had been criticized for promoting gun culture and drugs. In early 2020, he was in fact booked for promoting violence through his song Punj Golia, meaning five bullets. He was frequently photographed carrying weapons. Moosewala isn't the only popular Punjabi singer accused of glorifying violence through their songs. Interestingly, perhaps worryingly, also popular on social media are gangsters. At least 70 gangs operate in the state, and several key faces are known to have a big following. On social media, it is where they document their lavish lifestyles, posing with swanky cars and assault weapons. The police have in the past spoken about how this has been a key tool in getting new recruits. How and why did the gangs proliferate? Do they have any ties to militancy that ended decades ago in Punjab? What are Indo-Canadian gangs? What are their areas of operation? Is drug trafficking the mainstay? How is the Punjabi entertainment industry tied up in all this? What's the role of law enforcement? Do political parties patronize gangs? Let's put these questions to Mr. Shashi Kant, retired IPS officer. He's a former DGP Prisons Punjab. He's also been a vocal anti-drugs campaigner. Thank you so much, sir, for speaking to us here at Scroll.
Yeah, hello. Hello to
Right,
you all. And of course, to start with one clarification, I not only looked after the prison
right,
house in Punjab, but I looked after so many other things. And the
right.
moment this thing, adjective prison, comes against my name, along with my name, I lose
Right.
my life.
Right.
So
Okay.
that's it. Oh, sorry about it. Sorry, I
Right.
spoiled the show.
No, not at all. Let me get to the first question though. I have a specific question about prisons a little later in the show. I want to begin by, for those unfamiliar with what has been happening in Punjab over the last decade or so. We've read the statement from Chief Minister Bhagwant Mann, where he said he's forming an anti-gangster task force just after he assumed office. Can you, sir, tell us about the scope and nature of the operation of these gangs today? Do they have a stranglehold over parts of Punjab or certain areas in the of operation in the state, much like the Mumbai underworld did way back in the 80s and 90s?
Well, the history of gangsters in Punjab goes back to 90s. When we have was peace in the state and everything was sorted out, good and proper for not only for the time being but for all times to come. I'm sure of that. Around it was in 90s that name of one Rocky had come up, and he was also a promising young man, student of a particular university, and somehow or the other he had moved off to UP, where he got in touch with certain prominent gangs of a particular city. He was involved, along with that local gang, he was named in certain offenses like certain murders of businessmen, their kidnapping, ransoms, etc., etc. Then, as per the reports, he moved off to certain other states, and but his legacy in the state of Punjab continued. It was continued by one of his friends called Prabjinder Dimpa. I think, yeah, Prabjinder Dimpa. This particular gentleman was operating in UP, and then from there he went off to Bangalore and all those places, and then in uh, around 2006 he came back to Punjab. It is when his differences came up with this guy, his ex-colleague, Dimpa. And one fine morning, Dimpa was shot dead. Again, a brutal murder. It was right in the Chandigarh, in the famous park of Chandigarh. He was shot dead. From there, the story begins. This unfortunate story begins. Lots of other gangs came up, but they were all minor ones. And the one led by this gentleman, along with his erstwhile associates in UP, they started dominating the entire scene. Now, this gentleman was again, I use the word gentleman for everybody. This
Of course.
gentleman was killed in 2016 in Parvanu, that's the neighboring Himachal Pradesh. And to people's horror and surprise, a number of gangs, including some of these gangsters who were sitting in the prison houses of Punjab, updated their status, saying that they were responsible for the killing of this Dimpa. And that's where the entire thing takes off. This early 90s, then 2006, then 2016, they are the major landmarks. In this background, in 2021 came the murder of this gentleman, Midukera. Basically, he was a politician. He was the student leader of Punjab University. And I don't think there was anything called terrorist activity, etc., sort of assigned to him or related to him. At that point of time, when I was a student leader and a student in Punjab University, Chandigarh, another person, Lawrence Bishnoi, was also studying there. They became good friends. Because of certain reasons, and reasons are not known still, unfortunately, why Midukera was killed. He had no link up with any of these persons, neither with the music industry, except, and Bishnoi was okay, he was just emerging. I don't know whether you can call it intriguing rivalry or not, but again, this fact remains that Midukera was killed in a place nearby Chandigarh, a place called Mohali.
Right.
There was a gang called Bamburia gang. They took responsibility for his murder. Then rumors also came up, because there's no facts to substantiate it, that the manager of this person, Musewala, Sidhu Musewala is the village where he belongs to. So that's why his name, he was Sidhu. So he took this name of, straight name was Sidhu Musewala. This person called Shaganpreet Singh, he was his manager. Uh, it was rumored or said or whatever it is, because there's no fact that he was responsible. He had given the tip off to the Bambi gang for his killing, and he was shot. Immediately after that, this person Shaganpreet ran off to Australia. And but this thing continued, and it is said that Lawrence Bishnoi had sworn his promise to himself that will avenge his friend Vidukada's death. Now, it
Okay.
is said that it appears that now the gruesome murder of Sidhu Musewala was the result thereof. Shaganpreet is not here. He had moved off to Australia, and these guys were here. So they shot him dead, and immediately thereafter, his uh, his person, Lawrence Bishnoi's person in Canada, Goldie Brar, he took responsibility. Goldie Brar was also early involved in certain killings in Punjab. I think there was a Congress leader called Gurlal. He was shot dead, and he was
Okay.
involved in that case. So this is how entire thing comes up. And now, to make the situation all the more serious, now it has come in this Bambri again sworn to avenge the death of Musewala,
Okay.
who was killed a
So
few days back. That means this gang war is gonna continue if the government doesn't step in firmly.
right. That's been the nature of gangland killings. I want to ask you, Mr. Shashikant, a little bit about these sort of overseas operations tied to Punjab. I'll come to that question. Just a quick clarification on a point you made a little earlier in your answer. You said, when you were referring to some earlier gangland killings, you said these gangsters who allegedly carried out these killings were in jails and were updating their statuses from inside jail as to, did you mean updating their social media statuses? Because this is something I only learned in
Yes,
the course of my,
there's
uh,
social media status and all those things. Yes.
right. So
While,
the
while
presence of gangsters on social media is something that I hadn't heard about before. I mean, this is seems to be a sort of Punjab only phenomena.
Yes, it's basically, I think I find this thing more in Punjab because these guys, gangsters, have their followings not only in thousands but in lakhs and all those things. They've got immense following everywhere, whether it's your Facebook or Instagram or whatever social medias exist. They've got immense following, not only from Punjab but even from the diaspora section of younger diaspora living abroad, like Canadians and all those things. They've got their name, and sorry for saying this thing, big name for that matter, and they've got immense popularity and following.
Right. That's. I mean, that's perhaps a question to ask sociologists how this sort of phenomenon has played out. But my specific question about these Indo-Canadian gangs, Mr. Shashikant, they are reportedly among the major homegrown organized crime groups within Canada. To what extent are these groups influential in Punjab, and what sort of ties do these Indo-Canadian criminal groups or organized crime in Canada have connections to groups in Punjab?
Here I'll draw your attention to one of the reports. Of course, it's not very recent report of the RCMP, Royal Canadian Mounted Police. They said that this our Punjabi who settled there, a section thereof, they are the third major organized crime group there. Of course, there are tribes and there are certain other Chinese and other groups also. But our Punjabis, our ethnic Punjabis, who are a section thereof settled there, they're ranked third. And RCMP says that they have some of these persons they are involved in a big way in uh, drug running and arms running and all sorts of inter-country transportation from Canada off to US and from US or to Canada. All those things are going on. They are quite they got very they got ill fame there, and they are there. And of course, we these groups are linked naturally with our Punjabis here. We Punjabis have this thing that there's something called Canada. You know what we say, Canada. You ask anybody, what's your dream? Hey, my dream is to go to Canada or to America or that kind of thing. So I don't know what exactly is the bond. Maybe it's that in India we have got lots of problems, whether you talk of unemployment or whether you call of these youngsters, naturally they have got higher dreams when their dreams don't get fulfilled. So there is these Canadians, Indian
But
Canadians and Canadian Indians living here, they're very close. They've got very close links. So yes, they have. That's why
okay,
this guy has
okay,
been one of there, and earlier also it had happened. Some of the persons, and I'll
right,
tell you this. I'll just one more minute.
right,
I had filed a case on the drug smuggling issue, and in that it came up that a number of major drug smugglers from here they're also taking shelter in camp,
right.
and
So that brings me, Mr. Shashikant, to the question. Like the Mumbai, the city that I'm in, from the days of Haji Mastan and subsequently the Chota Rajans, Chota Ibrahim, Chota Rajan, etc. The mainstay or the sort of origin story of the gang wars in Mumbai is smuggling. That formed the mainstay. What is the mainstay of the gang operations in Punjab? Is it drug trafficking that forms the sort of mainstay, the backbone of their operations, or is it something else?
well, you'll be surprised that it also started with gold smuggling. It had been going on when you had this west coast of Maharashtra, where Haji Mastan, etc., were operating. Our border with Pakistan, Amritsar, Gurdaspur, was more or less open. And these were the two major routes for the smuggling of gold into our country. Your Haji Mastan company sitting on the west coast, and these guys sitting here. That's where it started. Then also this kind of problem used to come up in and rivalry. Somebody looting at another person's gold and all those things. So origin starts from there. Then we had a sort of tough phase here in Punjab, during which heroin and other opioids they was being pushed into our country. Most of the guys who were early into gold smuggling, powerful names, some of them, they took over the smuggling of drugs. because there was enormous profit and the prices of gold had established, more or less established internationally. There was not that much of profit. But that's how the entire thing starts. But like I told you, it is only since 1990s that the gang war as it exists today started.
Okay. Uh, Mrs. Shashikant, how is it? I mean, it is a, well-established fact that political strongmen tied to gangsters, etc. Many of them have continued to operate from behind bars with impunity. But in Punjab, they appear to stretch it a bit much. I mean, the fact that these gangsters can update their statuses from inside of jail and continue to carry out hit jobs such as the one that allegedly Lawrence Bishnoi and his gang have carried out from inside of jail certainly begs the question: what has law enforcement been doing? How do you explain this? I mean, you have had an inside look into how this works. How do gangsters operate with impunity from inside jails?
Like for these gangsters, prison houses are the safest of all the places, where they can sit comfortably and plan the things in detail, and from there contact their goons outside and ensure its meticulous implementation of their nefarious plans, like absolutely perfectly. That's what happens. And the reasons, therefore, obvious that they have their own links in prison houses. Like, see now what has happened in this particular case. Lawrence Vishnu is in Tihar jail. From there, he managed of the killing of Musewala, it is said. And from there, he was in touch with this guy in Canada. One person called Shahrukh, who is also involved in this case, he was sent to Musewala village to carry out to go and sort of recce the area. He recceed the area, got scared, went back, informed Lawrence Vishnoi and company that he will not go there without an assault rifle, without any automatic weapon. Lo and behold, from nowhere the gun came. Now you can imagine the kind of links that they have in jails because of which they remain in touch with their goons outside. You can imagine how sort of resourceful they are. Out of nowhere comes a projectile launcher, like what happened in our Mohali when this project. I don't know whether it was a bazooka or whether it was RPG because there are lots of confusion, but I'll call it a projectile launching gun. From where that came up out of nowhere, so these guys are, yeah, resourceful, and it's basically the money, I think, which matters. Money and their links with certain officials, and of course the politicians, because no person who is in service would like to do away with this job, like you guys were trying to do me in some time back. They won't like that. So they have their links up every, and officials also want it. They look up at their uh, masters amongst politicians so that their job also remains intact. And it's a messy nexus. It is messy nexus. It is
So you're saying it's purely political patronage that has allowed for this to continue in the manner that it has.
not purely, like I told you. Officials are also involved. Officials, whether they are jail officials,
But
whether they
surely
are,
if there was political will, this could have been put an end to.
yes, political will can put an end to everything. What happened in your Bombay? Of course, there were certain allegations of high-handedness, and I'm sure that human rights organizations must have sort of cried out pain and agony, but perhaps the police and the law enforcement agencies succeeded in neutralizing these goons who were roaming around openly on the streets of Bombay.
Right. Of course, Mrs. Shashikant here is referring to the encounter killings, which is another matter for discussion altogether. I want to briefly ask you, Mr. Shashikant, to focus on the Punjabi entertainment industry. What can you tell us about whether they have been victims of extortion and threats, like we've seen in Bollywood as well, in the 80s and 90s in particular? Is there organized crime money invested in the Punjab music industry? And is it fair to say that Punjabi pop musicians, many of them in fact, promote this sort of gangsterism and gun culture?
Look, these gangsters in Punjab, they are learning fast. They are learning fast whatever is going on in the Bollywood, whether you talk of the music industry out there or the movie industry out there. And unfortunately, what happened even in Delhi when the owner of the tea ceremonies was shot at publicly when he was going to a temple.
Yes.
I don't think, and there is no proof there too, that any ill-gotten money is involved in Punjab music industry. These guys are famous, and you know that Punjabis, particularly diaspora, has have loads and loads of money. They are showered with money, and these persons started blackmailing certain persons, and it is again a fact, though nobody has complained that certain singers and persons in the Punjabi music industry they were threatened and heavy extortion demands were there, and they paid off without creating any ruckus. There were only one or two persons. Like long back, there was a person called Chamkila. He and his wife was killed, but then it was felt that perhaps since it was right after the militancy that we had, that maybe they were killed on account of that. But recently, there was another person called Parmesh Verma. I think, yeah, Parmesh Verma. He was also attempted. He got wounded, but fortunately, he has recovered. None of the persons in the Punjabi music industry, except Moosewala's family, which is now coming up, that extortion bids were made on him, reported this matter to the police as far as my knowledge goes. So yes, so there's no ill-gotten money involved in Punjabi music industry, but hey, yes, they have loads of money, loads and loads of money they have, and
Right.
very much closely connected to come. This comes the our kabaddi industry. Like you have this IPL leagues, etc. As far as cricket is concerned, Punjab we have got this hockey federations, which are sponsored by NRIs. Punjabi is sitting out there, and you know the kabaddi matches again have immense amount of money. The prices in kabaddi matches they are right from your harvesters, like which cost 30, 35, 40 lakhs, to big swanky cars, mobiles, huge amounts of cash, risks abroad. So that's the second area, besides this music industry, where these goons, these gangsters are have been aiming at. You know, there was a in April, yes, it was April. April, one hockey player was killed. I think his name was Dharmendra. After which our CM announced the formation of the task force. So these are the two sectors. I'm sure that they are trying to extort money from builders lobby also. But again, nobody has complained till now. Like in music industry also, nobody has complained till now, unfortunately.
Right. Just a couple of quick questions to end, Mr. Shashikant. How much of a problem is access to guns and the indiscriminate issue of licenses for guns? I know Punjab is one of the top states in gun licenses. Is that an issue? You would say the sort of free, the sort of the fact that guns are so easily available and are legal and illegal, I would assume.
As per the latest information which comes, I'm told that 5 lakh plus arm licenses exist in Punjab. And certainly, Punjab has been a peaceful state, except for these incidents which are coming up. What for do we require the gun? Is gun culture is becoming a part of it, which has been sort of exploded and taken beyond proportion by the music industry. Most of the Punjabi songs they'll say that okay, murga kato, daru pio, or drugs lo, or bandook chalao, that kind of thing. That's why this gun culture which is coming, our youth they get swayed, and they also get swayed by this massive amount which is there. That they look at the swanky car, they look at the status that he's got 1 lakh of followers, etc., etc. So people youth are just getting sort of totally they're disillusioned or they are motivated. I don't know what's the right word. My English is very bad, so I don't know what's the right word. But yeah, that's what's happening here.
Right, influence certainly. To your one final question, sir, will Musewala's killing change anything? I mean, you've spoken about what have been sporadic incidents of gang killings that have come to light, and the extortion threats that not perhaps reported widely, but certainly this will be in the radar of law enforcement. The fact that these are areas where extortion threats from gangsters remain. Do you see anything changing with Musewala's killing and the focus on what's happening in Punjab?
No, I don't think, unfortunately, because I told you that it all started earlier. That we talking of the recent incident. Milu Khera's death was arranged this way. Now again, that's gang over here, gang or whatever it is. They are saying that they take revenge. This now it's the politics and the story of revenge that they have to take. So until such time, government doesn't take very very strong steps. There is law. Thus, these persons can be booked on Number of IPC sections and CRPC sections are there where these goons and who display these things blatantly, they can be booked in. Now let's see how far our task force is successful, how much Bhagwant Mann is successful. Let's see and let's hope for the best and keep our fingers crossed on that.
All right, Mr. Shashikant, retired IPS officer of there from Punjab. Thanks so much for speaking to us here at Scroll and for aiding our understanding of the gangs of Punjab and the killing of the popular rapper from Punjab, Sidhu Moosewala. Thank you.
Thank you.